20 years ago, yes, 20 years ago, we were given quite possibly the most comprehensive and complete Batman show to ever air, aptly named The Batman. The show released in 2004 and ran from '04 to '08, so just about 4 years, and in that time we were given 5 seasons in which we got to see the progression of Batman from his second year on the job all the way to being a member of the Justice League. Now, of course, some people are going to say, what about the DC Animated Universe's Batman? Well, I'd argue it is a better Batman show and a better Batman in general. This Batman is more complete. I don't have to go to multiple shows to watch his entire arc play out. It is all done sequentially in one show. And I think there's something special about that, especially in a day and age where superhero shows honestly might not ever get to be finished properly, at least in the way that we want them to be. And not to mention that this show is just great. I know it kind of gets sandwiched in between the DC Animated Universe's Batman and some of the later adaptations like Batman the Brave and the Bold, which was so wildly different that it made it memorable. This one kind of just fell flat in the middle and almost felt like a middle child at the time. Yet it honestly just deserves so much recognition for what it was. It was amazing in my opinion, and I wish more people had taken the time and chance to watch this show. And so, on its 20-year, 1 month, and like maybe 10 days by the time you see this anniversary, I want to give this show the proper time of day, and I just want to cover some of my favorite aspects from it. Because in all honesty, this is a Batman show for everybody. The first 2 seasons are an amazing solo Batman experience. I mean, it's all you could ever want from a more traditional Batman story. Bruce is fairly new to being Batman and doesn't have as many gadgets under his belt as you might want. We get to see him progress as Batman. We get to see him fail and mess up as he's slowly starting to get his own footing. We also get to see the introduction of a majority of his rogues gallery through this show, as Batman is just now getting away from street level crime, being that it's about year 2. Now earlier, while I did mention that this sort of felt like the forgotten middle child of Batman shows, I do also want to mention the fact that this show does a lot to set itself apart, especially from the DC Animated Universe that came before it, whether that's giving Batman his traditional yellow symbol, or just making the color palette of the show in general so much more vibrant and bright, whether that's just from base character design to set designs. I personally am such a big fan of how Gotham looks in this show because the night sky is always a different color. Not to mention this show's own unique takes on villains. Penguin is back to being short, stubby, and kind of looking like a penguin with his razor-sharp teeth. Not to mention, they gave Joker dreads, as well as the fact that he is also voiced by a black man and turns in my opinion, one of my favorite Joker performances to ever exist. Not only did this Joker feel maniacal, evil, and just downright scary, but he also got the goofy clown aesthetic so well. I mean, he just literally looks like a clown the entire show. And I think something like the blue tongue also helps set him apart character design wise. And another thing the first 2 seasons of this show did amazingly well is that they made a lot of original characters that felt welcome in this universe. Both Ellen Yin and Detective Ethan Bennett are some of my favorite characters from Batman mythos that were made specifically for this show. You see, back in the day, there was something called the Bat Embargo. Essentially, if a Batman character was going to be used somewhere else, i.e. a live action, a different Batman cartoon, you couldn't use that same character for the next Batman show. And because they were in production of making Batman Begins, a lot of characters were currently off limits to the team making this show. It's why we never got to see villains like Two-Face, and it's also why we never got to see certain characters like Commissioner Gordon until later. But yet they seem to do so well even with these limitations in place. And I also do think they had, a slight few misses. I wasn't the biggest fan of Mr. Freeze in this show. Again, he is much like his original counterpart from the comics, where he cares nothing more than stealing some diamonds, and that's kind of it for Mr. Freeze. No motivation outside of that. Yet, in all honesty, he's got to have one of the best designs character-wise that I've seen. Also, in that episode, we get one of Batman's coolest suits in the show, pun intended. That's another thing I liked about this show was Batman's constant outfit changes, his new toys, all kinds of new gadgets that he would have. Now granted, pretty sure that was just to sell toys, but at the end of the day, I still loved it. But this show also had reimaginings of villains that were just pretty good, such as Clayface. I made an entire video going over Clayface's arc throughout the first season of this show, because I think it's so well done and it's a nice new take on a character that has had like 9 or 10 iterations by now. And all of this is just in the first season, and that's not even mentioning the Bruce Wayne aspect of the show, in which we see that Bruce has a genuine life outside of being Batman, outside of just being the CEO billionaire Bruce Wayne. He has friends, he has family, and that's something novel and that we don't see a lot for Batman, is that he lives a regular life outside of all of these things.
Ate a game last night.
Speaking of, thought we were all set to shoot some hoops last week.
I've been buried, Ethan, 24/7.
Yeah, this Batman is definitely a little different. Bro was in Gotham long enough to play basketball in high school with Ethan Bennett, meaning he didn't exactly leave as soon as he could to go travel the world and become some sort of kung fu master. It's definitely not traditional that we think of Batman as having a life or just having friends outside of everything, somebody to go hoop with, having healthy relationships in general. It's not really his thing. So it felt like a novel concept for the show, even if I don't necessarily find it to be the best thing for Batman. And overall, the second season is just more of the same if you liked the first season, except now with Ethan Bennett no longer being a part of the good guys and honestly the main cast of the show, we get a lot more time spent on Ellen Yin and on the rogues of this show. Essentially, the second season takes everything you loved about the first and adds in a few new elements, such as Batman working hand in hand with at least one detective on the GCPD. Ellen Yin essentially steps in and takes the place of early year Commissioner Gordon before he was commissioner. And as well, we start to see a widening of Batman's rogues. Each season was only 13 episodes, so they could only put so many villains in at each season. They were also granted the ability to use more villains throughout this second season of the show. So we see villains like Riddler, for example, who has a very interesting e-boy type design, which is definitely interesting for 2005. But we also get to see villains like Killer Croc, who are making their own full-fledged appearance. We're slowly starting to move into the territory in Season 2 of less and less realistic and grounded villains, as I'm going to typecast them, and we get to see some more wacky adventures that Batman is going on with. We also get a ton of returning villains. Again, it's just more of what you loved from that first season. But we also get some nice bits sprinkled in. For example, we get to see Batman start to slowly build up a sort of gallery for his villains, a trophy room if you will. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but Alfred in this show is just amazing. He is so sassy and sarcastic, but just a fun treat to have in a Batman show like this.
It would be criminal to not preserve these items for posterity, so I've chosen to archive them. A private museum, if you will.
Another thing we get to see a lot of in this show is the Batcave, something that some Batman shows just don't focus on at all, but something that I find very interesting and intriguing because each Batman tends to have a very different Batcave comparatively to the others. This Batman is very much into futuristic, circa 2004, technology with lots of blue accents for his color scheme. No doubt to probably sell toys once again, but nonetheless, I still very much enjoyed it. As well, with Season 2, like I had mentioned earlier, we get some of the more supernatural and freak villains. For example, we get the first ever showing of a true supernatural villain for this show, that being Solomon Grundy. Now, it does end up being revealed that Solomon Grundy is nothing more than Clayface in disguise, playing off of an old Gotham legend to basically rob people during the night. But they decide that at the end of the episode that they're going to leave the door to be open for this type of thing to potentially happen in the future. This whole season was trying to get you ready and stair-step you into the honestly absurd chaos that would come further. Because after the first 2 seasons, the show is no longer about, you know, a traditional early years Batman. Instead, we're going to see a whole host of changes come with the third season of this show. Some I really like, and others I don't like at all. Let's start with one of the things I actually do like, and that involves expanding Batman's entire world. Essentially, Season 3 kicks off with a two-part introduction that not only introduces Poison Ivy, who's a kid in this show, mind you. Interesting choice, but whatever. But this show also does the bold thing of making Commissioner Gordon straight up Commissioner off rip, but it also does a few things I dislike, such as getting rid of Ellen Yin, like completely. She just disappears with no explanation ever. But it also does something truly novel that we almost never see, and that's making Batgirl Batman's first sidekick. You see, Batgirl is going to be the very first sidekick introduced into this show. Not Robin, but Batgirl. Something I didn't really understand as a kid, but looking back on it, I found to be a fairly novel concept. Especially because Batgirl doesn't exactly get to play with all of the same toys that Batman does. As a matter of fact, Batgirl isn't wanted at all by Bruce, as he sees her as nothing more than a liability and a kid trying to play at being a superhero at the start, and finds her antics dangerous. Barbara, throughout the entire time that we've seen her on screen, wants nothing more than to be a hero and to do something and fight for a cause she believes is worthy, just like her father does. Leads her to doing some very illegal stuff even before putting on the mask. But that's a topic for its own video. I don't know, I just find this whole concept novel and enjoyable. I also think this universe's version of Commissioner Gordon is absolutely wonderful and honestly deserved a little more screen time than he got. But again, I just love how Batgirl is portrayed in this show and how she's so low-tech comparatively to Batman, and how Batman puts such little effort into giving her actual technology to be a superhero, and often just leaves her behind like a real sidekick, at least at the start of Season 3, and it's honestly hilarious.
You get to do all the fun stuff.
Season 3 gives us a lot of great character moments between the two, and outside of that, in all honesty, Season 3 doesn't do a whole lot more other than giving us a lot of returning fun villains, while also giving us some brand new and extremely obscure villains. For example, there's an entire episode revolving around a dude named Gearhead, whose whole gimmick is stealing cars, and the entire episode's excuse for existing is probably just to make a new Batmobile to sell toys, but they do so in such a cool and novel way. Batman, for once in his life, in his crime-fighting career, is being out-teched, and so he actually has to actively try and outwork somebody who is known for being better with technology. And they do so with cars, because what is cooler to young boys than superheroes, driving cars, and big explosions? But either way, all that I have to personally say is that the brand new Batmobile that they make is absolutely spectacular. I was always a fan of the Batmobile from this show, but the second one really does bring me back to watching Batman the Animated Series back in the day, just with how the Batmobile looks, while also giving it a couple cool touches that I just love from this show, such as that blue technology outline that is almost always on anything, and that weird energy source Batman seems to always use that never gets properly described. And as for some of the other obscure villains, there's Killer Moth, who at the time was obscure, but nowadays Killer Moth is so big into meme culture that he's probably not as obscure of a Batman villain as he once used to be. So why don't we go just a little bit more obscure? How about Maximilus Zeus? Maximilian Zeus, my apologies. Yeah, that's how obscure this show gets with villains. Again, they're still being limited by the Bat embargo, which is such a big thing that DC made for no other reason than to try and not confuse people, but in all honesty, it just harmed the quality of the shows, yet this show seemed to play around it exceptionally well. They really got into their bag when it came to creating characters and just pulling out these old ones like we've never seen before. I never knew of this character existing until this show. It introduced me to Zeus. I'm just gonna call him that because it's easy. And I know this is a little off topic, but I couldn't really fit it anywhere else in my script other than to say that the mayor of Gotham is voiced by Adam West, and I just think that's hilarious and awesome. He doesn't make a whole ton of appearances in the show, but the ones that he does are absolutely fun. And so the third season in totality is just sort of a bridge to what we're going to see in the fourth and fifth season. It's a way for letting us as the audience see Batman's progression from brand new vigilante who is still being hunted by the police to slowly starting to work with the police more and more to introducing sidekicks like Batgirl into the fold. It's all ways of slowly progressing Batman in one singular show. It's not like the DCAU where Batman's progression is split up between like 4 or 5 different shows. All of this happens in one show. It's extremely easy and convenient to find, which is why I like it so much. This show feels like a quick crash course into Batman as a character for a younger audience. Keyword on that, younger audience. And season 4 really plays into opening up Batman's world just a little bit more. Yeah, it took 4 seasons of a Batman show, but we finally get a sort of proper Bat family with the introduction of Robin. Now, it is never really explicitly stated why they went with Batgirl first and did not start by giving us Robin, but regardless of why they chose to do it, it is just the reality of what happened with this show. And as much as I like this, I understand if some people don't. Season 4 brought with it a lot of changes to this show. From the style in which Batman is drawn, they stopped giving him such a narrow chin, instead broadening it, trying to show that he's more weathered with time, but also it's a more heroic jawline per se, rather than being narrow and sort of slinking in the background. Batman is very much out in the open now. Gotham knows he exists. He openly works with the police on a constant basis. Bruce Wayne is more of a public figure trying to help others out rather than being reclusive. Batman now will be sporting 2 very distinct sidekicks in brightly colored costumes. Batman isn't some sort of shadowy figure anymore. That's just not his thing. This is very much, as we're going to see throughout season 4, a Batman with a Bat family. And this show's Robin is also somewhat of a highlight. He's extremely fun and also extremely present, but that does lead to Batgirl taking a little bit of a back seat. But you know, at least she didn't, disappear off the face of the earth. I'm not gonna let this show live it down for what it did to Ellen Yin, but aside from that, Robin gets his whole introductory episode and also a pretty cool suit. One that does not look like it was handmade. Again, Batgirl got 0 love on the technological department in this show, and I find it hilarious. But at least Batman was ready and willing to take on an apprentice when he got Robin. Dick Grayson was to be his first true and welcomed sidekick.
I've been thinking, Dick. I'm not sure Bruce Wayne has what it takes to raise you properly.
Yeah, kinda noticed he's never around. But if not Bruce Wayne, what about the Batman?
And of course, with a new partnership comes new growing pains. Both Batman and Robin work extremely well together, whereas Batgirl not so much. As a matter of fact, Batman still has a slight stigma towards Batgirl, one that he doesn't share with Robin, probably because he trained Robin, or just because Batman doesn't like Batgirl. Regardless of the reason he has for it, there is definitely some growing pains, especially for Robin and Batgirl to work together. And of course, Batgirl's reaction to all of this is just absolutely hilarious. Batgirl in this show was just so much fun.
So you got a new partner. It's because I changed the presets on the Batmobile radio, isn't it?
But throughout season 4, again, we'll see less of Batgirl in favor of more Batman and Robin, along with some of Batman's more traditional villains. We actually get a second rendition of Clayface in this show, one that is more monstrous in appearance and more in line color-wise with how Clayface actually looks in the comics. Now granted, I wasn't a big fan of this, as I preferred Ethan Bennett's Clayface, and I much preferred how it was done throughout the show, and this second Clayface just kind of felt like a filler villain that they just needed for an episode, but he is important for finishing Ethan Bennett's arc, so it's a give and take with this show, especially the further along that it went. And if you thought Season 4 was crazy enough for introducing Robin and starting to open up the Rogues Gallery once again, Season 5, which is the final season, blew me out of the water growing up, especially because I had only had access to the DVDs for Seasons 1, 2, and 3, and my Season 1 DVD was not exactly in the best shape. Me and physical media, man, I destroyed a lot of it just by watching it. Season 5 was all about just blowing the gate wide open. It was crossover galore. We saw less Robin, we saw less Batgirl, but instead we got a whole ton of other superheroes. I mean, the first episode of this new season kicks off with a Batman and Superman crossover episode, in which Superman is voiced by George Newborn, who is reprising his role from the, obviously, DCAU, which for me was just absolutely ecstatic as a kid. I immediately recognized his voice because his Superman voice, to me, is extremely distinct. Regardless, this whole show was kind of just one stepping stone from another to different eras of Batman, just giving us different looks into what the Caped Crusader does year by year, as this entire 5th season would be the building up of the Justice League. And since I'm still on the topic of the Superman episode, I want to mention that Clancy Brown reprises his role as Lex Luthor in this show, which for me is so perfect because I genuinely can't imagine a better man to voice Lex Luthor. He just has it so down packed that I just struggle when it's not him. Clancy Brown is just in so much media that I've consumed, whether live action or animated or whatever. Dude's just everywhere. I know that has nothing to do with the video, but I just figured I'd mention it. He's all over my childhood and teenage years.
I take it Ms. Lane is alive and well, once again.
You've gone too far this time, Lex.
But I'm on your side, Superman.
And it's not just Superman. Out of the 13 episodes that we are given for Season 5, a majority of them revolve around different members of the Justice League, all being brought together and sort of showing up in different episodes of the show for different reasons. That's basically the entirety of Season 5. It's building towards a huge Justice League confrontation at the end of the season. And of course, we get characters such as Green Arrow, who are just fairly fun to watch and see be brought to screen, especially because he's a lesser known member of the League. And you can really tell that they're trying to differentiate this Justice League as much as they can from the Justice League that we just saw at the early bit of 2004 with Justice League Unlimited. Because this Justice League is very much unabashedly sporting Barry Allen's Flash, Oliver Queen's Green Arrow is a founding member, we're greeted towards Hal Jordan's Green Lantern, Hawkman is considered a founding member in this show, Martian Manhunter is there because why can't you have a Justice League without Martian Manhunter, right? Which, in all honesty, isn't like a great Justice League lineup, and it's also like an all dudes Justice League lineup. Makes me wonder where like any of the female superheroes outside of Batgirl are in this show, which makes an interview from one of the people who worked on this show in Season 3 really funny, because she said girl power, Batgirl showing up first. But when it came to the whole Justice League, it's all dudes. That's a gripe that I do have with this show's version of the Justice League, but we're getting a little bit off topic. Now, this entire show was just building towards a big Justice League 2-part special ending as a way to sort of swan off the show. This show gave us a lot, in my opinion. It gave us a Batman who is a loner. All he has is Alfred when it comes to being in the mask, and he doesn't work with the police. He has very limited rogues gallery, and he's still trying to get his footing underneath him, to a Batman who seldom works with the police, really only one member that he doesn't believe to be corrupt or that is hunting him, and then he just evolves from that to having Commissioner Gordon, to having Batgirl be his sidekick, to being a bit more brighter in the way in which he handles things. And Season 4 not only brings design changes for Batman, but structural changes for him as well. He gets his Robin. He's fully working with the police out in the open. Gotham knows that he exists, and we get a sort of Bat family. And Season 5 takes us into his Justice League arc. I feel like where the show decides to end in season 5 is a very natural ending for a show like this, because by the end of season 5 it's no longer just a simple Batman show. It's become so much more than that. It's an entire universe that they have been slowly building up over the course of 5 seasons. And of course, when you build a universe like this, it can't just be unilaterally perfect or forward progress. They definitely take some steps back, and they definitely have some bad episodes and bad redesigns of characters. But that's okay. Every show that needs to set itself apart and try to be different is going to have parts and pieces of it that some of us don't like and others love. I love this show because it has something for everyone. You want that Batman that's solo? Stop watching after 2 seasons. You want a Bat Family Batman? Watch seasons 3 and 4. You just want nothing more than a quick little Justice League show? Watch season 5. You can plug and play at any point throughout the show, and it's almost as though you haven't missed a whole lot. Maybe a few episodes here and there you won't get the context for. But that's pretty much about it, and it's why I love this show so much. It's insane to think that this show is just about 20 years old. It was one of the Batman shows I watched growing up. It wasn't the first, nor was it necessarily my favorite, nor was it really the best in my opinion. But what it did give me, I will always appreciate, especially during those long car rides as a kid. And the ending of the show was extremely satisfying. It's not often that I get a superhero show that I grew up watching that gets a proper ending that I feel satisfied with, but this show gave that. The Justice League defeat Brainiac, they all receive their powers back, and once again, the world is saved as they get to look out over Earth to a just beautiful final sunset.
Even with our powers, we couldn't have done this without you.
Well, some of us need powers and some of us don't.
Man, we've got the coolest clubhouse.
We?
Yeah, Junior Justice League, Teen Division.
Nice try.
If you've truly never watched The Batman, I know it's on Netflix in the US and you can probably find it a bunch of other places, but I would highly recommend giving it a watch through. No matter what level of Batman fan you are, this is a show for all of you Batman fans out there, and it's absolutely wonderful. So please, give this show some love on its... Okay, I missed the 20-year anniversary by like a month, but still, the show is turning 20, and I say go watch it if you're a Batman fan. You won't regret it, trust me. I tried to keep this overview extraordinarily brief and trying not to spoil too much in case you guys haven't seen it yet. And also because I want to do more video essays type deals on this show where I break down the characters, because I really do like it. Thank you all once again. Your continued viewership helps me to continue to make these videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you feel like liking the video, please leave a like. It helps out the channel a lot. If you want to subscribe, it's free. You can always unsub later. As well, if you dislike the video, please dislike it, and then let me know down in the comments below why. Constructive criticism helps me to be a better creator for all of you. And finally, I do run a Patreon for $1 a month. If you want to support the channel, you'll gain access to the Discord where I host weekly watch-alongs. You'll also gain access to each and every one of my videos completely unedited and early, up to and beyond 24 hours, depending on how I do it. And as well, once again, if you are in the $5 tier or above, you will be shouted out at the end of each and every one of my videos, just like these lovely people here. So without further ado, shout out eSibert13, shout out Gabriel Lafonte, shout out Transgers1, Video Gamer 75, shout out Golden Boy 420, Dakota Rawson, Donovan Gomez, and MC Bomb 27. You all are amazing, and I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day.